A video is circulating around the internet showing a woman describing her first time attending a Catholic Mass after a lifetime of being a non denominational Protestant. Also, Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire sparked a debate online when he said that men should not go to therapy. I'll tell you what I think about that. And a video has resurfaced of former president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, being prophesied over by a self proclaimed prophet who somehow, even though this was weeks before the event of his eventual kidnapping and arrest by the U.S. government, somehow the prophet, quote unquote, forgot to mention that part. So thank you everybody for being here who is live. Make sure to say hello in the chat and also make sure to please like the stream. It really does help the channel. I see Cruz in the chat. I see Justin just became a member. Thank you very much for the support. God bless. Haymar is here. Andrew is here. And Asa is here. And I do not know enough Latin to translate this. I know... No, I don't even want to make an attempt because I'm going to butcher it. So I'm so sorry. I've been exposed as not knowing Latin, unfortunately. Lebanese Legand says, "Hey Sips, you helped me with my conversion to Catholicism from being non-denom." Wow. Well, praise God. That was my journey as well. So, raised non-denominational my entire life. Became an atheist, came back to non-denom land, and then eventually became Catholic after taking a quick detour into Lutheranism. So I'm really glad that my videos have helped you. Thank you. And if you have any questions or any topics of conversation that you need help explaining to maybe some non-denom family or friends, please feel free to let me know. I love taking video requests and all that stuff. So thank you. All right. One Hope for All is here. Hello, hello. Thank you for being here. Cruz says, "Love watching these streams and distracting myself from my job." Do your job, all right? I'm doing my job right now, and you don't see me being distracted. Well, except for maybe by your comments. As a counselor, I'm intrigued by Matt Walsh's statements. I'm intrigued by your perspective after as we go through that story. That's going to be interesting. All right, Gracie's here. Joe is here. Hello, hello. Donald J. Trump is here. Thank you, Mr. President. Very cool. Only here because you're doing Exodus. I'll make an exception while I fill out my seminary application. Well, God bless you and good luck on your seminary application. Big Stack is here. All right, everybody's here. Okay, so everybody's here, but not everybody has liked the stream. So please make sure to like the stream. And yes, today is day 2 of Exodus 90. So if you guys are doing that, I hope it's going well. I'm hoping to maybe have some kind of a weekly thing in the Discord where we all kind of talk about our experience so far. King Silva's here. So if you're not in the Discord yet, make sure to get in the Discord. We're going to talk about our Exodus 90 journeys together. Maybe every week, maybe every other week. It depends on time, really. Been crazy busy lately. So yeah, been crazy busy doing these streams, preparing for these streams. We do these every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time. God willing, sometimes life demands that we move the time a little bit, but that's what we aim for. So if you want to catch these, make sure to subscribe, like the stream so you get recommended them in the future. Turn on the notification bell on YouTube after you subscribe so that you get notified of these, and so on and so forth. Also busy making Patreon-only content. I do have a Patreon-only series that we are in the middle of right now. It's going through every single mystery of the Rosary and going deep into what this mystery can teach us about the faith, how we can deepen our meditation on this mystery in our devotion to the Rosary, and much, much more. So if you're interested in that Patreon-only series, then go and join over at patreon.com/sipswithsarah, linked in the description as well. So without further ado, let's get right into the reason that we're all here, the reason that we've all liked the stream, which is that I came across this video actually this morning of this woman talking about her first time going to a Catholic Mass after growing up as a Protestant. And I found that a lot of her, actually pretty much everything she says here is very relatable because, as people know, I grew up non-denominational. I grew up going to actually super charismatic churches where people were speaking in tongues and running around with waving the banners and tambourines and people falling on the floor. I went to one of those churches growing up, and God bless them. They're great people there. So if any of them happen to see this, God bless you guys. You guys are awesome. But please become Catholic. It will be better for you and for the Catholic Church to have you join it. But then I started going to these Calvary Chapel churches, as people know. I did a video recently revisiting my old Calvary Chapel church, and my experience along, all of these different types of churches in non-denom land, so to speak, or evangelical land, you might say, um, is very, very similar to her experience and what she describes. And so my encounter with Catholicism was actually very similar to how she describes it as well. So let's hear what she has to say. Enough of me talking.
I just got back from my first time going to Mass. I'm still learning, obviously. I'm still very new to all this, so don't come for me, please, if I say something wrong. I honestly have been drawn to Catholicism since coming back to Christianity. I put off going to Mass for a while just because every time I would mention it to one of my Protestant peers, they would look at me like I just ran over their dog in my Hyundai Tucson. Yes, that's a joke, but it's really not an exaggeration. A lot of Protestants do not play about Catholicism, which is just strange to me because every Catholic I've told that I'm going to Protestant church, they're just like, okay, cool, have fun. And that's a generalization, but that is my experience.
Yes, when I, again, very relatable. When I was a, Calvary Chapel attending Protestant, and I had an interest in Catholicism, I told my grandparents about it. I told a lot of people about it because I didn't know that there was this dislike between Protestants and Catholics. I actually had no idea that about the Reformation or any of that. So I told family about it, and I thought that they would be excited. And instead, they either made fun of me like severely and made fun of Catholicism and the Pope and made fun of priests and stuff like very sacrilegious stuff, and or or they were like, "You're gonna go to hell. You shouldn't do that. That's idolatry. Um, you shouldn't go there. They're a cult." Those were the two responses. And whenever, now after being a Catholic, after being a catechist at my parish, whenever the reverse is described, it's kind of like, oh, somebody's going to a Protestant church. It's kind of like, all right, like, I don't, okay, why? I don't know, but okay. But no one's like, you're going to go to hell. It's a cult. They're mostly just like, that's cute. You're going to go play church for a little bit, which maybe is a little bit condescending, but um, there's certainly a difference in approach or difference in perspective on each side. The Protestants think that Catholicism is evil and scary and it's a cult and you're going to go to hell. And Catholics think Protestantism are it's just kind of silly. So, obviously there's exceptions to that. Obviously there are Catholics who think Protestantism is evil and stuff. But whatever.
There does seem to be this very large rift. When I told someone that I was gonna go to Mass, he was like, jokingly, but he was like, okay, have fun, idolater. And I was like, dude, like the church we're going to right now, like the praise band is up there having like a Pitch Perfect style riff off, trying to like out sing each other. I was going to a non-denominational church, so I think it was a very stark contrast between the non-denom church and the Catholic church. So one thing I really liked was there was no time wasted on personal anecdotes, metaphors, personal stories. I think those can be great. Sometimes I would rather just get into the scripture and like get into the meat of it instead of hearing about something that happened to you out and how work is really like church if you think about it and blah blah blah. I understand that metaphors can make it easier to understand, but sometimes I think those bother me. I don't know. Sorry. I'm
Very, very relatable. Yeah. In non-denom land, there's I mean, obviously, and we're generalizing, and there's exceptions and stuff. I'm sure there are some really great non-denominational churches. I'm positive that exists, but it does seem that a lot of the more prominent examples are the pastor is giving a lot of personal anecdotes, and you'll never believe what my wife said to me yesterday, and it's like all kind of silly and casual and jokey. When it's like, okay, when do we get to the serious stuff? When are we going to do like the really serious Christianity stuff? Like when is this part over and we're gonna get to like the real stuff? That's how it can feel a lot of times. That's how I felt a lot of times as a Protestant, was just like, when does the serious stuff begin? And it never did. It never did.
judging. I know I'm not supposed to do that. Another thing I liked was the tradition. Obviously, I couldn't participate in a lot of it because I'm very new to it and not that educated on what all of it means. I did like the traditional music. That was one thing at my Protestant church that I mean, I mentioned briefly earlier, but it really did bother me. And I understand all worship is worship. I'm assuming they have good intentions, but at the non-denom church I was going to, it truly felt like an American Idol audition, the praise band. And like it was confusing. Like it wasn't adding to the worship. Like people would get confused because the guy singing would be like adding little like runs like in between verses, and people would be like looking at each other like, wait, like what verse are we on? Because he's just like ad-libbing, which is like fine, not my style. They did announcements at the end of the Catholic Mass.
So she said something. She said, "I understand all worship is worship, but actually, we can't. That's not true. All worship is not equal, and in fact, as a Catholic, we would say that much of what goes on, if not all of what goes on at a Protestant church service, is not, in fact, worship in its highest form. There might be adoration. You might be adoring Christ. You might be adoring the name of Christ. You might be praising God, and those are certainly aspects of worship. And there is an adoration that you can give to God that is due to God alone. That does constitute worship. That if that adoration, that same adoration, were given to anything other than God, it would be considered idolatry. So there is an aspect of worship that can, and I'm sure does occur at Protestant church services. But worship in its fullest sense, as we see in the scriptures, is sacrifice. That is why, especially in Exodus, as we're going through Exodus 90, actually, we're going through the story of Exodus, and the Israelites wanted to be free from Egypt so that they could go worship their God. And what did that look like? Well, it looked like going and making a sacrifice to God. So they would go, they wanted to go and sacrifice a cow to God. So that is worship in its highest form, is sacrifice. It's what we see all throughout the Old Testament, and is what we see in the New Testament with Jesus Christ establishing the new covenant in his body and blood. His sacrifice on the cross is an act of worship and an act of love to God. And so we still participate in that same sacrifice through the Eucharist, where the Eucharist is consecrated, as I'm sure this woman has now experienced, has witnessed. The Eucharist is consecrated. It is presented to God the Father, where the priest says, through him and with him and in him, O God, Almighty Father, and the unity of the Holy Spirit, all glory and honor is yours forever and ever. Amen. That is where that sacrifice is presented to God the Father, once again, in union with the sacrifice on the cross. Not a re-sacrifice, but a re-presentation of that same sacrifice that happened once and for all time, as Hebrews tells us. So that is the highest form of worship. You cannot find that anywhere outside of a church that has apostolic succession, where the priest can validly consecrate a Eucharist. Outside of that apostolic succession, you can have, services where it looks very similar, but the same thing is not being accomplished because the lack of apostolic succession in Protestant churches means that they cannot consecrate a valid Eucharist, which means they cannot validly offer sacrifice to God because they don't have a valid priesthood. So all of that is to say, I know there's a lot. All of that is to say that not all worship is the same. And so the worship you encounter at a Catholic church is going to be much higher, much deeper, and much more pleasing to God, you could say, than any form of worship you're going to find at any Protestant church.
They kept that very brief. That was like the only thing that they did that was not straight from the text or a hymn. I guess the main thing I've noticed is that a lot of Protestant churches that I went to or looked at online seem to emphasize fun as being sort of a key point of the service. You know, we have the concert-style praise band, we have the Chuck E. Cheese water slide theme park camping extravaganza retreat. That's $3,000. I'm being mean. I need to calm down. There was just a lot of emphasis on like, how can we benefit from church? How can we feel good? I think church should be fun in a way, maybe. I think it should be like rejuvenating. You should feel close to God afterwards. You should feel like refreshed and stronger in your faith. But I don't necessarily think it should be self-serving. I don't know. No,
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, what are we supposed to get out of church? What are we supposed to feel after church or during church? What is supposed to happen to us in church? Now, of course, again, with the Eucharistic theology that Catholics have, when we partake of the Eucharist, we are actually eating Jesus Christ's body and blood, and He is indwelling us. And so each time we take the Eucharist, we become more and more like Christ through the power of the sacrament, through the power of Jesus, through the sacrament. So that is That might manifest itself in different ways. You might not feel a different way after taking the Eucharist. You might not feel a different way after attending church. But the beautiful thing about Catholicism and about the sacramental theology that we have is that our feelings actually don't matter. Or not that they don't matter, but that essentially they don't matter. Essentially, they don't matter. They definitely don't matter when it comes to determining what is true. So if we feel like nothing has happened during taking the Eucharist, it doesn't mean that nothing has happened because our feelings aren't always a determinant of what is true, but actually something objectively has happened. In the same way that maybe more um, relatable to a Protestant or non-denominational Christian would be to say, if when you convert to Christianity, when you profess Jesus Christ as Lord for the first time, you might not feel different, but something definitely has happened objectively, whether you feel it or not. And in the same way, when you attend Mass, when you partake of the Eucharist, something does objectively happen, even if you don't feel it. So I think that certainty, that objective certainty that something is taking place on a spiritual level, even if you don't feel it on a physical level, is a beautiful certainty that we have in our faith that really you can only have if you have a sacramental theology, because that is the only way you have these objective things that you participate in that are provided to you as gifts from God, where you can point to something objective and say, that happened. I was baptized. That's an objective thing. I was born again on that day. Whereas in a non-sacramental theology, it is based on feeling. It's, well, and this was my experience as a non-denominational Christian. It was like, well, I don't feel close to God today. So I think God might be mad at me today. I don't feel his presence today. I don't feel exuberant and joyful today. So that must mean that God is upset with me or something. God is distant from me because I don't feel a certain way. That is the result of a non-sacramental theology and a non-sacramental version of Christianity, if it can be called that. So I think that's kind of what she's describing here.
I'm sounding preachy, but like, do you know what I mean? It just felt to me a little bit like the plot had been lost in a lot of the churches that I was going to, even in high school. Like some of the Protestant stuff. We'd have chapel 3 days a week in high school, and it was always just these speakers, like wannabe stand-up comedians, or like telling really just like sad stories. Again, I'm judging. I know I'm not supposed to, but like it just didn't feel. It didn't even feel like I was at church. It just sort of felt like I was like at a motivational speaking event. I don't know. I mean, I could start taking the Catholic classes and be like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore, you know? But I did like it a lot better. And I think we need to change the narrative a little bit of Catholicism.
So she said something important there. She said that in her time going to these, in her, what was it, a Christian high school, they had chapel 3 times a day. But all that it would be was some kind of a speaker who would either try to be really funny or tell a really sad story about their lives. And she says something very important. She says it didn't feel like church. And I think that the people who started the non-denominational movement would actually hear that and take that as a compliment. They would actually be glad that she's saying that, because that was the goal of non-denominationalism, was to make it feel less churchy so that it'd be more welcoming to non-believers, and that they would come in and still feel welcome and not be intimidated by all the churchy stuff, all the crucifixes and the stained glass and the statues and all that. They wanted church to feel like not church. That was the goal. But rather than attracting people, which maybe it has, I'm sure it has, it's attracted people. Maybe it's a lower barrier to entry to go to a non-denominational church than to go to a Catholic liturgy, not know what's going on, and not know why all these statues are all over the place, and not know what any of this stuff means. But it ultimately results in people leaving non-denominationalism. And in fact, there is a hunger within all of us for tradition, for liturgy, for structure, and for something deeper than a motivational speech or a really bad rock concert. We do desire something deeper than that. And when that is taken away from us, we start to think, well, is this all Christianity is? Is it really just this? Or is there more to this? Like I said earlier, we start to think, when does the serious stuff happen? When does the real Christianity stuff happen? Because if you have a seeker-friendly church that is only trying to only invite new people, then you're not going to be able to help the people you've invited in now grow in their faith, because there's no growth happening. It's purely an invitation, purely inviting, inviting, inviting. And what are you inviting them into? You're inviting them into an invitation. So the next week you can go to the same invitation and have new people invited in. And then what are they being invited into? An invitation. So there's never any depth being fostered. There's never any spiritual growth being fostered in that kind of a model, which is a huge problem for them. And it's why, as this woman is describing, the Catholic way of doing things, of actually having a liturgical, traditional faith, is actually much more appealing to people who actually want to take their faith seriously.
Like the plank in your own eye or whatever. They really don't like Catholics, a lot of people. I'm generalizing again. Are you doing it 100% right either? Because, like, I don't think so. Okay, bye. That was a rant.
That was great. Yeah. Again, very relatable. I, growing up non-denom, I relate to a lot of that. I remember actually when I was towards the end of my time at Calvary Chapel, I was like, how do I go? How do I get deeper? Like, how do I do more? Like, how do I grow spiritually? I don't feel like reading the pastor's new devotional, the new daily devotional that the pastor published this year that I can buy at the bookstore for, $12.99. I don't feel like that's the way I'm going to grow spiritually. I feel like there should be something deeper than that. And ultimately, I did find that in Catholicism, in prayer practices like the Rosary, in practices like going to adoration, in practices like fasting, in practices like going to daily mass. Those are the things that have made me feel going to confession. The sacraments are the things that have made me feel much more close to God and have actually helped me grow spiritually in a way that I never have experienced before. So it's almost as if the sacraments actually do something. It's almost as if the sacraments actually do have spiritual weight and do have spiritual effects on you in a very positive way. Interesting. All right. I missed a lot of chats. I'm not paying attention to the chat because I want to get through these stories. So I'm very sorry if I missed a bunch of questions or something. If you, sorry, I just saw Eric's comment. I'm not responding to that. No comment. I plead the fifth. Yeah. So I don't know if you want a better chance of getting your chats read, you can super chat or wait until the end where I will actually be looking at the chat. But for now, let's get through some more of these stories. Okay, so another story that has been taking over X for the last day or so started with this post and eventually led to Matt Walsh saying that men generally should not go to counseling, should not go to therapy. But let's read this original post that started all of this debate, and we'll see what we can gain from this. So this is from Justin Murphy. I have no idea who this guy is. Maybe he's great. Maybe he's a monster, as he might think he is. But he says, "Am I just a monster? It's been 4 years since I became a father, and I'm beginning to fear for my soul. The truth is, I just don't like being around kids for very long. Historically, this is not uncommon among fathers, but today it feels almost illegal. It's causing me a lot of confusion and anguish." Interestingly, I used to feel this way, but now I love it. I hang out with my niece and nephew, and they're just like a lot of fun. I don't know. I feel like when you just drop the thing that you want to do with your time and you just do what they want to do, it's a lot more fun, and you just kind of go along with their nonsense, and it's fun. Kids are fun, and they're cute. So let's hear what else he has to say. He says, "The ideal amount of time I would like to spend playing with my kids is probably 70 to 140 minutes a week, roughly 10 minutes each day, maybe twice a day, taking breaks from work." 10 minutes a day? That does not seem like enough time. "My feelings of love toward them are perfectly strong, but if I have to watch them or entertain them for more than about 10 minutes, my blood starts to boil. I just want to be working or accomplishing something. I try to be grateful, but it doesn't work." I think a lot of people feel this way. I don't think this guy is alone in this feeling, but this is a very common thing, especially in our society. We always feel like we have to be accomplishing something. And oftentimes, what that looks like to us is, being on our computer, or even sometimes, for myself at least, I'll feel like I need to accomplish something, which means I need to go on X and scroll through to see if there are any interesting stories that I can talk about on the stream. Sometimes that happens to me. But actually, you're not accomplishing anything when you're doing those things. Like maybe you have some stuff to do for work, but it actually doesn't take your entire day. It shouldn't take your entire day. Actually, your priority, what you should be accomplishing is should be primarily with your family. Yes, you have to provide for your family, but if providing for your family means you can't be present with your family, then you're you're fulfilling one obligation while neglecting another, which puts you kind of in the same position. It might even be worse than if you were to limit your lifestyle a little bit and work less and spend more time with your kids. So all that is to say, accomplishing stuff is shouldn't be our main goal. Our main goal, especially if you're a parent, and I will be a parent, or I am a parent, but baby's not born yet. But God willing, he will be very soon in April. So pray for me. But the primary responsibility of the parent is, yes, to provide, but also to foster a relationship with that child and model ideal human behavior to that child. So you want to model a good marriage. You want to model, how to play. You want to model how to have interpersonal relationships, and you do that by interacting with your kids. You don't do that by, well, I make the money and then I don't know, the mom deals with them. That's not how you actually uh, are a good example for your kids, and that should be your goal. Your kid to get your kids ultimately to heaven, but to at least, before that before they get to heaven, have them be a productive and positive part of society, which is it is necessary to be present to be an example to them. So he says it's 9 a.m. this morning, Saturday, January 3rd. It's a sunny, warm day here in Austin, and my 4-year-old son is begging me to play catch in the street. That sounds awesome. I was drinking coffee, still waking up, so I didn't really feel like it, but at this age, his desire to play is insatiable. He begged and begged, so I conceded, and with a smile. I have no problem being a kind and loving father. The problem is only that I do not enjoy it. It's not that I'm trying to maximize my personal pleasure. It just seems wrong that I experience so little delight when my dad friends all claim to experience so much. Hmm. He says, it was beautiful. We live on a picturesque tree lined block. I'm even relatively relaxed from the holiday rest. Playing catch with your son is supposed to be an iconic peak experience. Yet for every single minute on the inside, I just don't want to be there. I want to be drinking my coffee in peace. Then I feel guilty and absurdly ungrateful and ashamed, and we're done. When we're done. I know that when he is a teenager, I'll long to have these days back. I have all of this perspective rationally, and I've been very patient and steadfast trying to digest it, but nothing fixes me emotionally. Am I a terrible person, or is my feeling within a certain range of historically normal and it's modern parenting norms that are off? Whether it's my fault or not, I don't even care. I just want to figure this out. Something is wrong, and I no longer have the excuse of being new to this. Um, Man, well, again, my baby's not born yet, still in the womb, so maybe my perspective on this is different or not fully formed, but I am uh, I am looking forward to having a kid, and I also I love hanging out with my niece and nephew, as I've said. I love hanging out with them. I love reading books to my niece. I love, my nephew can't walk yet, but he can walk if you hold his hands. I love running around with him like that. It's very cute. It's very fun. I'm sure once I become, once my child is here outside of the womb, I'm sure he is going to, be difficult. He's going to cry. I'm going to not sleep as much as I would like. There's going to be less time than I would like for things that I want to do or things that I feel like I need to do. But I don't know. I just feel like whatever you're doing with your kid should be and is more important than anything else you can do. Maybe I'm trying to think this through, but that just seems to be the obvious truth. What your kid wants or what your kid needs from you is much more important than anything you want. And your kid needs from you quality time. Your kid needs from you to play. Your kid needs from you to sit and read books to them. That's what your kid needs from their father and their mother. That's what their kid that's what your kid needs. That's not an optional thing. And so if I say, "Well, I want to do this other thing, but my kid needs me to, spend time and hang out and to foster a good relationship between us, which is necessary for like proper mental development." Well, I guess if my kid needs that, this should be the attitude. If my kid needs that, then I should put aside what I want and and just do what actually needs to be done. Stacy has a good point. She says, maybe the realization that you are forming an actual person and that is what you are accomplishing. Yeah, that is very, very important. Louis says, mimic Christ. Being a Catholic father requires us to have sacrificial love. Yes. All right. So the debate came in. This got heated when Matt Walsh responded and said, there are two solutions to your problem. First, stop obsessing over how you feel. That is a really good piece of advice, by the way. He says, spend time with your kids. Stop analyzing how you feel about spending time with them. That is super good advice. And I think much, if not most, of modern mental health problems could be fixed if we just stopped caring about how we feel so much. Like when you go to work and you say, in my experience, if I were to go to work and say, well, I don't really feel happy at work. I don't feel joyful at work. I don't feel like this is what I want to be doing. And if I obsessed over that the entire day, then I'm just going to be miserable the more and more I think about it. But if I were to say, yeah, this kind of sucks, but let me see how I can try to find some joy in this. Let me see how I can try to make this tolerable for the next 8 hours, then that's going to be a much more healthy response to the situation. And I think the same likely applies to having children. I know sometimes I don't feel like hanging out with my niece and nephew. Sometimes I don't feel like it. But I know, like, hey, this is good for them. And this is actually like, it can be fun if I just have the right mindset. So instead of saying, well, I don't feel like being here and there's other things I could be doing, I could say, well, maybe that's true, but I'm just going to find out how can I make this fun for me? And usually that is just by going along with whatever the kid wants to do, which is always fun and cute. So Matt Walsh goes on, second, most importantly, stop revealing your deeply personal anxieties on the internet. Also very good advice. Don't reveal them to anyone, actually. Carry them quietly like a man and do your duty. The good news is that if you get your head out of your and forget about your feelings, you'll also feel better. But that's a downstream benefit. It happens when you stop trying to make it happen. Yes. Okay. People are gonna. This is where people kind of started to divide, because I think it is true. If you stop caring about your feelings, if you stop feeling the need to express your feelings to other people, like, well, she just really needs to know how I feel. Why? Why? What is that going to accomplish? Because then she'll understand me. Okay. Um, it's pointless most of the time. And if you just stop caring so much about how you feel, stop feeling the need for your feelings to be seen by others. I need to feel heard, or I need to feel understood by others. That's making you more miserable as you're doing that. You're just being more miserable because it's more self obsession. It's more like what I feel matters and everybody needs to know more about me. And that is actually a miserable place to be. Narcissism makes you miserable. The more you think about yourself, the more miserable you're going to be. The more you think about others, even sometimes to the detriment of yourself, actually the happier you're going to be. So maybe just try that. But some people took issue with Matt Walsh saying to carry your emotions quietly like a man and do your duty. Now, I think actually, I have to look up some studies on this, but I have seen studies that show the less you obsess about your feelings and think about how you feel, actually the less you think about yourself entirely, the happier you're going to be. And so maybe this is good advice. Some folks differed. For example, this person said, carry them quietly like a man actually isn't the answer. That's what therapists are for. Man needs to tell these things to a therapist. I don't know. I don't know. I think it depends on the therapist. Okay. Because I've heard, I know people who are in that field, and they say that at times, depending on, where they're based and all that, depending on the laws of the local region or whatever, sometimes they're not even allowed to give advice. Therapists, all they're allowed to do is hear from the patient and ask questions, which I don't think is often that helpful, because again, it's just making you focus on yourself. How does that make you feel? Well, I feel like this, and I feel like she doesn't understand me. And instead of saying, hey, maybe just like stop, maybe just stop and just do what you have to do, and stop thinking about yourself. But sometimes you can't actually give advice as a therapist, which is wild. But Matt Walsh says, as a general rule, grown men should not go to therapy. Most therapists are liberal women who couldn't possibly have any useful advice to give them. Most people who go to therapy are also women. That's because sitting around and talking about your feelings is inherently feminine. Men don't solve their problems that way. Now, I don't have the stats to confirm any of these things. But I do think that liberalism is very prominent in this field, obviously. Um, and I do think that most things in society nowadays have been over everything's put into terms of therapy, of like trauma, triggered, um, and things like that. Andrew, who I believe has some experience here, says therapy is also overused in our society, but it does have a time and place. I agree with that. I think somebody in the chat said, depends on the trauma. Yeah, if you're somebody who has been in a legitimate, like traumatic thing, like a war or some kind of severe abuse or something like that, I think therapy can be very helpful for those types of things. But for something where it's just like, I don't like hanging out with my kid, I don't know that therapy is necessary in that case. I don't know about that. I think in fact, if you're not too careful, I think therapy can in fact be a detriment to somebody's like emotional progress, especially if the focus of the therapist um, is entirely on making you look inward to yourself. That's like if you could go to a therapist and a therapist could be like, "Hey man, you're being an idiot. Maybe you should go and like do something for other people for a change and stop thinking about yourself so much." If the therapist could say something like that, I think therapy would be great. But I think most therapists, again, because of the restrictions that are put on them many times, but especially, a lot of them probably already agree with this, but a lot of therapists will tell you, your feelings are valid. You should express your feelings openly. And if you feel like you're not understood, you should voice that, and everybody should feel free to express themselves. And when that's not what most people need, I think I think we've got that. Like our society has kind of instilled that in us already. We've already kind of gotten that message, and we've gone too far in that direction. And now we need to go in the other direction of, hey, how about you just shut up and do what you need to do, and it's going to be okay. Let's see. Matt Walsh responded to this other comment. So the comment says, I knew a thrice divorced woman who is a marriage therapist. What? Not sure how she stayed in business. And to which Matt replied, divorced people should be barred by law from getting marriage counseling licenses. But of course, such a law would wipe out like 90% of marriage counselors. This is true. This is in fact true. If you're divorced or unmarried, I don't know that you should be a marriage counselor. Now, some people will say, what about priests, right? What about priests? They're not married, and people go to them for marriage advice. I think that's different because priests are married to, in a sense, the church, or you could say they're married to Christ, and they do have a lot of experience in self-sacrificial love, which is necessary for a marriage to be successful. So I think priests actually do have experience that can be very helpful for a married couple. We also have deacons who are allowed to be married, or priests in Eastern rites of the Catholic Church who are allowed to be married, as well as the ordinariate. But even for unmarried priests, I think that they can give you a lot of advice, beneficial advice for your marriage, even if they are themselves not married. Andrew says, marriage therapy is always a 50-50 shot if you get one who will actually want to help your marriage. Suffer unto sanctification says, most therapists will give you the courage to do whatever thou wilt. Exactly, which is a satanic principle, by the way. It's always your will over God's will. And so maybe there are some Catholic therapists that would be good because they can tell you, like, hey, you know what the church teaches? It teaches to, like, think about other people. And you know what this saint did? Even though she really didn't want to, she helped other people and went to her death for her faith or whatever. The model in Catholicism is self-sacrifice at your expense for the benefit of others, which is which is actually what leads to the most happiness, which is why, as One Hope for All says here, Catholics are the least oppressed of other religions or even Protestant denominations. And that's because of the sacrament of reconciliation. Reconciliation is beautiful. Yes, you can go to a priest. They have scheduled times. You go on the Catholic Church's website, look up your local Catholic parish, go on their website. They have confession times. If you are a baptized Christian, you can go to confession and confess the things you're guilty about. So this guy could have gone to confession and said, I don't feel like I want to spend time with my son, and I feel really guilty about it, and I'm not sure like if that's a sin or whatever. And the priest, not only will he give you advice, he will give you very good advice. By the way, I've received a lot of good advice from priests during confession, but he will also tell you, you are forgiven of your sin. I absolve you of your sin in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And you have that objective assurance that we get from sacramental theology, like I talked about earlier with that previous video, that objective assurance that you are forgiven and you actually receive spiritual graces through the sacrament of reconciliation or penance that will strengthen you. Father Carlos Martins, the famous exorcist, says that one confession has the power of 1,000 exorcisms, more than 1,000 exorcisms. So you actually receive spiritual graces to strengthen you as you go out and face the world. So do that. It's great. If you need to go to confession, trauma stuff, I get it. Like there's always exceptions to these things, but I think generally things have been a little bit too over medicalized, therapeutized, if that's a word. Probably not. All right. Cruz says, this idea that it's beneficial that all men go cry all their feelings out on social media is very gay. True. Yes. Andrew says, existential therapy is all about a question of oneself to find ultimate truth, which you can use to actually take action to become better. All right. I feel like some of that might be whack. Some of it might be good. Existential therapy. I have a bias against existentialism in general, so that makes me not like it. Stacy says Theology of the Body Institute has Catholic therapists, don't they? Probably, and it's probably great. I think if you come at therapy with a Catholic perspective, it's going to be very positive, I'm sure. Asa asks a question, got any tips on discernment in general? I'm 18, about to start my second semester of CC, is that what, community college? And I have no idea what I want to do. I'm not feeling called to the priesthood or marriage or any career path. I'm probably not going to be very helpful, to be honest. I think you can look to your strengths, which is probably something you've heard already. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? Maybe you don't know what you enjoy doing, so maybe you just got to try some stuff. Like if you don't know what you're good at or what you enjoy doing, it means you haven't tried enough things. So look at some different professions out there. The way that I got into software was I was actually going to school for biology, and I wanted to be a biology professor, which really glad I didn't do that because it would have taken forever and I would have gotten not paid very well. And I probably would have been miserable. And I probably would have been a liberal. But anyways, I probably wouldn't be Catholic. But anyways, the way that I got out of that major was I, first of all, realized it probably wasn't feasible to do. Like, it's probably not a good idea. Like, the return isn't going to be that great for the amount of effort that I put into it. So I thought I'll try some other stuff. So I tried looking up some like engineering type of videos on YouTube. And then I tried looking up software development videos on YouTube, just tutorials. And I did a software tutorial on YouTube and I was like, this is a lot of fun. I love this. And I feel like I'm like picking it up pretty quickly and I really enjoy it. So I'm going to do that. And I did. And there you go. So yeah, again, if you don't know what you want, what you like doing or what you're good at, it means you haven't tried enough things. So just try more things. Appalachian Catholic says, I'm trying my best to do frequent confession. Yes. Yes. Good. It's so good. I highly recommend it. I've been trying to go, man, I used to go once every 2 weeks and that has since gone down to like once a month, once every 3 weeks or so, which I really want to get back up. We got a super chat. Thank you so much. Says Reed, was this supposed to say Triumph of the Therapeutic by Reef? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the recommendation. Thank you for the super chat. Suffer Unto Sanctification says I go at least once a week. Wow. If confession helps you, then you don't need therapy. Easy discernment. Yeah. I think also if you're, a lot of what has us feeling depressed oftentimes is like, I know this sounds cliche or whatever, but it really is a lot of times a lack of exercise, a poor diet, and um, no routine in our daily lives, and also no sense of purpose beyond this life. If you figure out those four things, I feel like you're going to be happy. Or at least not happy in the sense that you're like exuberant and joyful all the time, but you're going to feel a deep sense of peace. So work out, at least 3 days a week. I think that's one of the requirements of Exodus 90. Actually, work out at least 3 days a week. Um, what else did I say? Have a daily routine. Wake up at a certain time. Go to sleep at a certain time. Brush your teeth. Take a shower every day. Whatever. Have a good diet. Don't just eat garbage. Like actually eat like chicken and vegetables every day or something. Don't eat out all the time because you're gonna be broke and unhealthy. And figure out what you believe about faith. Deeper questions about life. What is the purpose of life? What are you doing? What is the purpose of your life? What are you dedicating your life to? Figure that out. Obviously, the truth is that there's a God. That God founded the Catholic Church. And so the best thing you can do is to go and join the Catholic Church that he founded. And once you have those, I feel like those four things, once you have that figured out, it's very unlikely that you're going to be depressed if you have those things figured out. And then getting married and having children will also make you very happy because that adds to the purpose aspect of your life. You now have a vocation that you objectively have and do not have the right to, shy away from. So something is expected of you, which makes you feel like you have a purpose. You have something that's driving you. Which is why people who are married with children are actually the happiest people when surveyed. That's both men and women. So do those things. Catholic Observer says, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Not a fan of therapy, even though it helped me, but my mother-in-law turned into a selfish human being. Most everyone I know became selfish. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, again, a lot of therapy you're encouraged to look inward and to focus on yourself more. Pray the rosary. Yes, the rosary has helped me overcome a lot of mental problems, including panic attacks and anxiety. I had severe panic attacks and anxiety, almost had daily panic attacks at a point. Praying the rosary helped me and got me out of that routine of panic attacks. So highly recommend that. Beautiful practice. Cool. Daily rosary is very important. Very true. Okay, let's get to the next story that I had lined up for us here. So this video has resurfaced. This is from a few weeks ago, apparently, where a quote unquote prophet was quote unquote prophesying over Nicolas Maduro, the former president of Venezuela, who just a couple of days ago was deposed of his presidency and arrested by the US government and is now facing trial in New York, I believe. And so here was the prophecy that was given just weeks before this happened. Says this nation, protect all the land of Venezuela. Even as you have shown me in a dream, you are going to throw it at the enemy. The enemy will not approach. It will always be glorified. I have decreed victory 3 times. Victory, victory, victory. In the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. So the prophecy that was given here by this supposed prophet was that God is going to protect Venezuela and that he was shown in a dream that the enemy will not approach and Venezuela will always be glorified and that Venezuela will have victory. And essentially God is going to protect Venezuela. Now you might say actually this came true because Venezuelans are very happy that Nicolas Maduro is no longer their dictator. And you might say that God protected Venezuela from him. Not to get into politics or how anybody feels about this particular military campaign or whatever, but That's the only way that this prophecy seems to come true, is if that interpretation is taken. But as this is being prophesied over Nicolas Maduro, the quote unquote prophet here failed to report that you're going to get kidnapped by the U.S. government, my friend. He forgot to mention that part. He did receive that part in the dream, but he just forgot to mention it because he was so excited to be there with the famous Nicolas Maduro. So this was posted by Protestia. They quote the supposed prophet by saying, "Lord, I decree with my prophetic tongue today that you protect the president of this nation. The enemy will not come near." Quote, Prophet David Owur prays over President Nicolas Maduro and prophesies that nothing would happen to him. Weeks later, Maduro was captured by U.S. forces. Yeah. 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 I don't even know what to say about this other than obviously this guy's not a real prophet. And that did not come true, obviously. Pope Defender says, rare Protestia W. They post some W's sometimes. Now, can you guess what type of Christian this quote unquote prophet is? Can you guess what tradition he might come from? Not the Catholic tradition, that's for sure, because Catholicism believes that the gift of prophecy has ended. Public prophecy is no longer to be expected. There's no longer to be expected new divine revelation. So likely this is a Pentecostal, as someone in the chat correctly predicts. Pentecostal Protestant, not a thing that happens in the Catholic or Orthodox branches of Christianity, or the Catholic root of Christianity, or the Orthodox branch of Christianity, I should say. So very cringe, very sad. And this stuff is just so embarrassing. This is why people don't take Christianity seriously, by the way, because you have people claiming to be Christians who believe that they can prophesy things about the future, and then it turns out to not be true. And in fact, instead of this even being your desire, instead of you even desiring to know what's going to happen in the future, or can I convince God to, prevent bad things from happening to me? Instead of that, maybe your approach should be, am I doing God's will? If not, how can I correct course? If so, how can I continue to have the strength to do that? And so maybe if Nicolas Maduro spent a little more time wondering what God wanted him to do, how God wanted him to treat the people of Venezuela, rather than wondering, can I have this weird prophet guy come and pray for me or something and have a dream about me or something. Maybe if he worried about the former rather than the latter, he would be in a better position today. And maybe the people of Venezuela would actually like him. Catholics believe private revelation still happens. This is true. You can still have a private revelation. I believe I've had dreams that were private revelations from God, but public revelation or public prophecy is not a thing that we are to continue to expect. All right. Let's see, a couple other stories that I had lined up here before I hang out and just talk to the chat is, well, first we got a super chat from One Hope for All. Thank you very much for the super chat. Who says, Adrian, have you ever thought of starting a live scheduled daily rosary that we can all pray together, or just post a video of your voice praying the rosary with images of the mysteries? I did post some videos. I think I have a playlist called The Rosary or something like that. But I didn't finish. I think I only did 3 sets of mysteries out of the 4. So I haven't finished that. To be honest, I don't know that I will be doing this. Not because I have anything against it. I think it's great. And other people do have a regularly scheduled rosary that they pray with everybody, which, like Keith Nestor does this. Others who I'm blanking on. But you could also join the Discord, where actually people pray the rosary every single day in the Discord, which is It happens every day at 2 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're interested in praying the rosary daily with people in the Discord, sometimes I do pop in there, but you can go in there and pray the rosary with them daily. On Fridays, they also pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet. They have other prayer devotions as well that they engage in. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that though, simply because it's a lot of time. I pray the rosary with my wife at night and our little baby in the womb, but I'm probably not going, at least for the time being, I don't plan on doing this. So, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. But hopefully you understand. Hammer says, darn. Oh, you're talking to somebody else. Okay. Yeah, Keith Nestor does a daily live rosary. All right. Now for this next story. Let's see here. So yeah, if you have, I see some questions in the chat. If you have questions, then do either leave a super chat or wait until the end, and then I will answer more questions. One Hope for All says, that's fine, Adrian, just an idea. It's all cool. I appreciate it. And I've seen a lot of your ideas, by the way, One Hope for All, especially regarding membership stuff. And I'm going to be doing something about this. Don't worry. I see your suggestions. I think they're very good suggestions. And I think you're right in a lot of your suggestions. So I appreciate them. Keep them coming. The Discord is open to all. So please jump in the Discord, you guys. I think we have 500 people now, or at least almost 500 people, which is absolutely insane. Okay. Let's take a look at this story. So the leading cause of death for 2025 has been revealed, and to pretty much nobody's surprise, it is abortion. Abortion in 2025 killed 73 million people. This is an article posted by lifenews.com. And this number, by the way, is not coming from lifenews.com themselves. It's not coming from some pro-life organization that's trying to, have some kind of a higher number. This number actually comes from the World Health Organization. So lifenews.com says here, more human beings died from abortions than any other cause of death in 2025. A heartbreaking reminder about the prevalence of abortion. Statistics compiled by Worldometers indicate that there were over 73 million abortions worldwide in 2025. The independent site collects data from governments and other organizations and then reports the data each day, along with estimates and projections based on those numbers. Worldometers bases its daily abortion figures on a May 2024 fact sheet from the World Health Organization, which estimates a tragically high number for babies killed in abortion. The World Health Organization says around 73 million induced abortions take place worldwide each year. This is insane. It's tragic. It's sad. This is probably the leading cause of death in world history is probably abortion at this point. Because if 73 million abortions take place each year, and that keeps growing each year, by the way, and however many years that's been happening, you got to think hundreds of millions of babies at this point have been killed by abortion, which is, it's got to be the highest single cause of death of anything. Like, there's not even a single war that has killed more people than abortions. I'm trying to think of all the wars in the big wars that we know of in the world combined in history. Have those killed as many people as abortions? I don't know. I think it might be close. I think less than 73 million people died in World War II. So this is incredibly tragic. And in fact, if we look at the other causes of death that are non-abortion, 67.1 million people last year died from causes other than abortion. So more people die from abortion each year than die from non-abortion causes combined. So if you took all of the causes of death combined that are not abortion, that is still less than the amount of people that are killed by abortion, which is absolutely insane and tragic and ridiculous, especially when you consider that most abortions happen for reasons of, financial stress, relationship uncertainty, and personal feelings of, I'm not really planning to do this at this time. I'm not ready for this. That's like 96% of abortions worldwide is that. It's going to be too financially stressful. I don't have a consistent relationship, or I'm not ready for this yet. That's 96% of abortions right there. The rest of the abortions outside of that are for quote unquote medical emergencies. Now, there's never a medical case where an abortion is necessary to save the life of the mother. There might be a case, and there often, unfortunately, there can be cases, there are cases where an early delivery might be necessary, which will likely result in the death of the baby. But that's so much different from intentionally killing the baby. So if a woman has a medical, a severe medical situation where they say we got to get this baby out, the options are either you intentionally kill the baby, or you deliver the baby early and try to provide it with medical care to try to sustain its life. So there's never a case where you have to kill the baby in order for the woman to survive. You can just deliver the baby early, which is, which tells us that there's never a case where abortion is actually medically necessary. That just isn't the case. And you might say, well, what about the woman? She has to deliver the baby. That's going to be stressful. It's going to take more time. But even when a baby is aborted, you still have to deliver the baby. So that doesn't hold. That argument does not hold. So let's see what else they have to say here. Say when contrasting the abortion numbers to other causes of death, including cancer, HIV, AIDS, traffic accidents, and suicide, abortions far outnumbered every other cause. By contrast, an estimated 10 million people died from cancer in 2025, 6.2 million from smoking, 17 million from disease, and 2 million died from AIDS or HIV. Deaths by malaria and alcohol are also recorded. Okay. Now, a lot of people are obviously disheartened by this, saddened by this, as we should be. And we're wondering what can be done about this. Well, the first thing that can be done about this is you can donate to pro-life charities. You can donate to pregnancy centers who are dedicated to helping pregnant women in difficult situations choose life and provide them resources so that they don't feel like abortion is necessary. You can obviously vote for pro-life candidates. There's a lot we can do. You can go and pray at outside of abortion clinics, and you can also join. Let me see if this is the right one. Yes, you can join this USCCB, the U.S. United States Catholic Bishops, Conference of Catholic Bishops, has released this on their website saying that they're doing a 9 Days for Life novena. So they say here, Catholics nationwide are invited to pray 9 Days for Life, an annual Respect Life novena starting Friday, January 16th. So I believe that's next Friday. So next Friday, this will be starting. So put it on your calendars. Remember to pray this along with all the other Catholics in the U.S. and internationally. I don't see why you can't do it internationally. They go on to say, in the Catholic Church, a novena consists of prayers over 9 successive days, and this particular novena is an opportunity for prayer and penance in observance of the annual Day of Prayer for the legal protection of unborn children on January 22nd. All are invited to sign up. Participants may access the novena or subscribe to receive the daily prayers by email or text message in English at 9daysforlife.com or in Spanish at respectlife.org/9 días por la vida. Okay. So highly recommend everybody go and do this. Go to 9daysforlife.com and sign up. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be praying this novena. Very personal topic for me because I was almost aborted. In fact, so my mom, because of many pregnancy difficulties that she had, she was told that she would not be able to have children. Then she conceived my sister. The doctor said, we don't know how that happened. My sister was born on Christmas Day. Then 10 years later, she conceived me, and the doctors were like, we don't know how that happened, but this baby's probably not going to survive. My mom was encouraged by the doctors and, painfully by other family members to get an abortion. And she said, well, if the baby's not going to make it, might as well just give him a shot, see what happens. Now, meanwhile, she was on drugs, homeless, not living a good life. And she decided anyways, even though she was in that difficult situation, not in a position to have kids. She decided, I'm going to give this kid a chance anyways. And so I am eternally grateful to my mom for making that choice, for not listening to her other family members and the doctors who were telling her that this was hopeless, just abort the baby. And so I think it's very important for me that we encourage other women to make the same choice, even in difficult situations. And instead of say, hey, you're in a tough spot, why don't you just kill the baby? Instead of say that, why not say, hey, you're in a tough spot, why don't we help you out? How about we provide for you medical care for free? How about we provide for you supplies like diapers, formula, um, clothes, shelter for free? How about we help you out? Maybe that should be our approach. Maybe that should be our approach instead of saying, hey, uh, you're in a tough spot. We don't really want to help you out. So just kill the kid. We don't want to do this. We don't want to deal with all this stuff. I think actually I have a pro life sticker here. There's that one. And then I thought I had another one. Well, there's this one from Live Action. But I think I have another one. Maybe it's on my laptop. Maybe it's on the back of my laptop. But it says love them both. Like you can actually just help both. If they're in a difficult situation, you can actually just help them out. So my mom, to tell you the rest of the story, my mom ended up having me. Thank God I was healthy. No medical problems whatsoever. Mom goes to jail or prison. I don't remember which one. Shortly after my birth, actually I was like 2 months old. Mom goes to jail. Dad is homeless, living in his car, not able to take care of me. So I end up in the foster system. Now the foster system sometimes ends up being really bad for some folks, but it's certainly much better than death. But it ended up being absolutely miraculously good for me. I came into a family. I always cry when I tell the story. I came into a family of two wonderful people who raised me in the Protestant Christian faith, who are still in my life to this day. They raised me from when I was 2 months old, and they've been in my life ever since, even after I went back with my mom a couple years later. So there's hope for whatever situation. Maybe, somebody hearing this or somebody or whatever is in a situation that it seems hopeless and I can't keep this kid because, I'm in a really bad situation. I guarantee my parents were in as bad, if not worse, a situation than you're in. And they gave me a chance and everything turned out great. Thank God. And so maybe give your kid a chance. Maybe just have some hope that something good will happen instead of making sure that nothing good happens. Instead of making sure that evil happens, provide a chance for good to happen. And there are definitely organizations out there that can help. In fact, Catholic churches are actually very helpful in providing food and resources. And they also usually have connections to pregnancy centers that will also help out. So go and check out, if you're in a situation like that, go and check out your local Catholic church and ask them if they have any resources or know of places, have connections to places that have resources. Help is out there. Now, you'll be happy to know my mom is in a much better place now. She's not doing any of the things she was doing at that time. She's in a really good place now, really, and we have a great relationship. So I am very grateful to her and glad that we have that relationship that we have. All right. Well, that I did not expect to get into that story, but I guess it's definitely relevant. So thank you guys for sitting through that. I do have more to discuss. Hello, hello. Let's see. Your mom was like Saint Gianna. Yeah, Saint Gianna Molla, I believe. Moya, Molla. You know what's funny? This is maybe going to make me sound crazy, but Saint Gianna, I believe, appeared to me in a dream before I knew who she was. So in a dream, this was like around my confirmation. After I had had a series of demonic dreams, I believe, very, very scary, dark dreams before being confirmed. After being confirmed, I had a dream about, I didn't have the name of the saint presented to me, but there was a dream of a woman, pregnant woman, who was emanating a light so bright that I couldn't even look at her because it was just so bright. And I heard what I believe to be the voice of God. By the way, I realize maybe I sound crazy. I don't care. But I heard a voice that told me this is the patron saint of of pregnant women and mothers and stuff. So I looked it up, like who are the patron saints of pregnant mothers, and obviously like Mary comes up definitely, but also I found out about Saint Gianna in that way, who was diagnosed with cancer as she was pregnant. They said we can treat your cancer, that you can survive this, but we have to treat you now, and the baby might die from the treatments. So you can abort the baby, deliver early where the baby was probably likely going to die, or you can just start receiving treatments and the baby's probably going to die from the treatments. So she said, Suffering of Sanctification says, everything you've said this stream has been incoherent rambling. So true. That is the regular here. So Saint Gianna said, well, I'm just going to deliver the baby. I'm going to put off treatments. I'm going to wait until the pregnancy comes to its completion, deliver the baby, and then I'll start treatments. And she died because they weren't able to start treatments early enough. So she died of the cancer, ultimately sacrificing her life for her baby, which is, again, as we were talking about earlier, sacrifice is the Catholic way. You sacrifice yourself for those you love, for those who are in your care, and even for those who hate you at times, as Jesus did on the cross. And because of that sacrifice, she is a beautiful, wonderful example of the faith and is now a canonized saint. So Saint Gianna Beretta Mola or Moya, pray for us. Probably mispronouncing it. So I'm so sorry to Saint Gianna, but please pray for us anyways. Wow, One Hope for All's daughter's confirmation saint is Saint Gianna. That's so beautiful. I love it. Amen. Saint Gianna's daughter's name is Gianna, and she's also a doctor. Yeah, Saint Gianna was a doctor, and her daughter is also a doctor. That's great. Okay, final bit of news here. This is a long stream today. We got a lot of news to cover today. But this is, let me make sure I have the right. Yes. So if you don't know, Charlotte, the diocese that Charlotte belongs to, has been undergoing a lot of like liturgical enforcement. Some might say liturgical oppression or something, because the Bishop of Charlotte continues to prohibit Latin Mass, prohibit traditional Mass, but also lately I think has even prohibited kneelers at Mass, where you can't even now kneel to receive the Eucharist in the diocese that Charlotte belongs to. So Charlotte priests have submitted a dubia to the Vatican over liturgical changes. This is coming to us from pillarcatholic.com, also known as The Pillar. And they say here, more than 30 priests in the Diocese of Charlotte have submitted a set of questions to the Vatican related to a recent liturgical changes announced by the local bishop, including a decision to ban the use of altar rails and kneelers for communion. They go on to say the dubia were sent in a letter to the Dicastery for Legislative Texts on January 5th. The letter obtained by the Pillar requested formal guidance and clarification about whether a diocesan bishop has the authority to make liturgical changes announced and proposed by Charlotte Bishop Michael Martin in recent months. So again, yeah, a lot of prohibiting traditional aspects of the Mass, which these priests who have signed on to this document are asking the Vatican to weigh in on this and say, is this permissible for a bishop to literally prohibit the manner in which we celebrate Mass traditionally? So it says here, 2/3 of the signatories are pastors. The letter notes that it arises in response to a pastoral letter released by Bishop Martin last month, announcing that altar rails, kneelers, and praedius, I don't know what that is, will not be permitted for reception of the Eucharist in the diocese, beginning in early 2026. Temporary or movable fixtures used for kneeling to receive communion must be removed by January 16th. So churches that have kneelers have to remove those by January 16th, according to this document by the Bishop of Charlotte. So they go on to say that there have been rumors that the bishop also plans to introduce additional piecemeal regulations on the liturgy based on a leaked policy draft that would have prohibited Roman-style vestments, altar crucifixes, and candles. In favor of those used in the processional and placed next to the altar, the use of Latin language, and the recitation of vesting prayers customarily recited by priests as they don the vestments used for Mass. Okay, that hasn't been verified, so I don't want to already attribute that to this bishop, and I want to be respectful of anybody in a position of authority in the church. But that would be horrible for the priests and parishioners of Charlotte. They say both the leaked letter from this past summer and the pastoral letter of December 17th have caused a great deal of concern amongst the priests and faithful of Diocese of Charlotte, especially in those parishes that have allowed the faithful to use an altar rail or prie-dieu for the reception of Holy Communion, said the letter accompanying the dubia. So this is, again, this is going to the Vatican. The Vatican will have to weigh in on this, or we'll decide whether they want to weigh in on this or leave it the way things are going. Obviously, many people are hoping that the Vatican does weigh in on this, and that the Vatican says to the bishop, hey, let the people worship how they want to worship. But it's been really sad to see what's going on in Charlotte, and I hope that something positive happens for the people of Charlotte here and for the priests of Charlotte. So if you want to go read that entire article, you can go to the pillarcatholic.com and read it there. But that was something I just wanted to quickly comment on and bring attention to, because a lot of people have been asking me how I feel about this, and I'm like, especially if a parish wants the kneelers, I don't see what the harm is in allowing that. I prefer a more traditional form of Mass. I actually do go to a Novus Ordo typically. It's a reverent Novus Ordo. I like a reverent Novus Ordo. There's Latin Mass available to me, but it's at times that are often inconvenient. But I also do enjoy the Latin Mass. I love both. A reverent Novus Ordo and a traditional Latin Mass, I think both can be very beautiful. But if people want to kneel to receive the Eucharist, I think it should be allowed for them. I don't know. Hamar says, our bishop banned altar rails in Novus Ordo churches a while back. Yeah, I don't understand what the reasoning is for that. There are non-reverent Novus Ordos. Oh, Edwin, you pure innocent child. You have not been exposed to the irreverence that happens at some Novus Ordo churches. It can be pretty bad. All right, 133 people here, only 93 likes. We got, I'm not good at math, but that's a 40 person disparity there. So if we can get those likes up, and I'm happy to take any questions now. There are reverent Novus Ordos? That's a good question too. Yes, there are. And they are beautiful. I love the Novus Ordo when it's done beautifully and reverently. It's great. Yeah, bring back chanting the scriptures. I love that. Chanting is beautiful. One Hope for All says, I have been to one parish where the priest removed the kneelers in the pews because he was old and didn't like the loud bangs from the kneelers when people would kneel. Most of the parishes around here have cringy boomer guitar music. The cathedral is the only one with hymns. Many such cases, unfortunately. Irreverent Novus Ordo Mass should be banned. Very true. Chanting is awesome. That is in fact true. I did save a chat from earlier because I mentioned that I pray the rosary every night with my pregnant wife. And so Suffer Unto Sanctification says, is your baby also reciting the rosary or more of a passive recipient? I'd like to think he's reciting it in there. He's in there saying, Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. I would like to think that. That would be very cute if he was in there reciting it with us. I prefer a reverent Novus Ordo with an altar rail for communion, but honestly, it is most important to have a very dedicated and reverent priest, which is sadly hard to find. Many are people pleasers. Yeah, I mean, I think the priests at my parish are very excellent, excellent. Um, Especially the main pastor of the church, excellent. And many of the churches around me are very good in that respect. But I have come across some that are, it's like, what? I didn't even know that this was allowed. His pronunciation probably isn't that good. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. He's extremely based. Um, he also prefers a Reverend Novus Ordo or a Latin Mass. Latin Mass is preferable to the little one in the womb, but let's see. I have recently been struggling with praying in the morning. I want to spend more time, but it is hard sometimes. Any tips? It depends what you're struggling with. I think if you're struggling with the like sitting still for 20 minutes, it's very normal. If you're struggling with like not looking at the phone for that long, again, very normal. And I think some things that might help is putting your phone away from you, unless you're using Hallow or something. Hallow is really good for keeping your attention during prayer because they actually, there's an audio version of the prayer that you can follow along with. But I do think that the rosary has been very helpful. I don't know what your Sam, maybe I need more information because I don't know if you're already trying to pray the rosary and that's being hard. The rosary can be challenging to pray if you're not used to sitting still for 20 minutes. But I find that having something physical in your hands, having the phone away from you, out of reach, face down so you don't even see if it lights up or something, um, preferably out of sight entirely, and having something physical in your hands like a rosary and iterating through the beads as you're praying can be very helpful for keeping your attention and helping you meditate on the mysteries, which is a very beautiful practice and one that I've benefited from immensely. And if you want to know more about the mysteries of the Rosary, you can go to my Patreon where I'm releasing a Patreon only series on the mysteries of the Rosary. We go in depth. It's like 30 minutes to an hour each episode on the mysteries of the Rosary. Third episode is coming out this week. It is going to be on the joyful mystery of the Nativity, which is a big one, and one that we recently celebrated with Christmas. And we are still celebrating because Christmas is still going on. Christmas is a season, not a day. So if you want to follow along on that series, you can go to patreon.com/sipswithsarah, also linked in the description. And hopefully it's been good for the folks who have been watching it. I've certainly benefited from recording it. All right. That rosary looks cool. Thank you. I don't remember the name of the people who I got it from, but it was at a conference. And I love this clip thing. Actually, there was a stream that I did a long time ago, probably like over a year ago, saying that I wish I could find a rosary with that clip so I could just clip it onto my belt buckle, my belt hoop, and carry it with me that way. And now I found one, and I do, and it's great. Isn't Christmas over after Epiphany? I've heard conflicting things. I've heard that Christmas is over on January 11th, but I've also heard people say that Christmas is over on February 2nd. So I don't know which of those is true, but either way, Christmas is still going on now, regardless of either of those positions. So we will continue to celebrate and keep your Christmas decorations up. Keep your nativity scenes out. Asa says in the Archdiocese of Dubuque, there is one Latin Mass due to restrictions on which parishes can have it. At my Novus Ordo parish meeting about Archdiocese restructuring, I had to explain why people like it. Well, good on you for doing that. Christmas season ends on February 2nd. Okay. Okay. I'm happy. The longer Christmas goes, the happier I am. So let's do it. One Hope for All says, I have attended Polish masses at a parish where I've attended English and Spanish masses as well. And the Polish mass is the most reverent there. Everyone receives kneeling at the altar rail. That's beautiful. Poland is awesome. And Polish Catholics are extremely based and awesome. Pax et Lux says, can you do a video covering Calvary Chapel since you came from that Protestant denomination? I can. I guess I'd be curious what you'd want me to cover. I don't want to just do like a a hit piece like Calvary Chapel's bad. Here's a bunch of bad things about Calvary Chapel. But if there was something constructive I could say about it, then I'd be happy to do that. Poland is extremely based. If I had to move to another country, I would go there. I've been thinking about that. Not moving. I haven't been thinking about moving, but I've been thinking like I really want to go to Poland. I feel like I would like it too much and I'd want to stay. I believe I do have some Polish ancestry, but probably very little. Many people come from that denomination, and maybe helping people who come from that denomination understand Catholicism. Yeah, that's true. I could do that. Yeah. Maybe I can do a video titled something like Why I Left Calvary Chapel and Became Catholic or something like that. I don't know. Why I left Calvary Chapel, and then just talk about, because it wouldn't be things specific to Calvary Chapel only, unique to Calvary Chapel. It's these are things that apply to all non-denominational or evangelical churches. It's really just the lack of true worship and basically the shallowness, the lack of depth in the faith as they understand it and practice it. I have an aunt from Poland. She's a super based Catholic. Nice. All right. What are your top 5 theological books? Oh boy. I just recently read Matt Fradd's Jesus Our Refuge, which was really good. That would be up there for sure. But there's a difference. It depends if you're asking like apologetics or spirituality. Yeah. Behold Your Mother is essentially why I became Catholic. That book is amazing, by Tim Staples. Talks about all of the Mariological beliefs of the Catholic Church and why they're true. Jesus and the Jewish Roots of the Eucharist by Dr. Brant Petrie. I just finished reading, actually last night, I just finished The Saints Pray For You by Dr. Carlo Broussard of Catholic Answers. Very, very good. Joe Heschmeyer's The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Trent Horn's Why We're Catholic, if you want like an introduction to each topic of Catholic theology. That's a good one. But yeah, I guess it depends on what you're looking for. My wife right now is reading Dr. Brant Petrie's Introduction to the Spiritual Life, which she says is really good. So I have to read that after she's done with it. Yes, I know. I didn't finish the book. Okay. Whatever. It's a long book. Woot woot, school's back in, and I'm back in the car rider line for my SIPS day. Okay. Cheers to that. That's great. That's funny. Question: where is the Bible in the Bible? It's not. The Bible's not in the Bible. You need an external authority to tell you which books are in the Bible. My OCIA handed out Trent Horn's book like pamphlets. That's awesome. Yes. Question from someone that was raised in Europe and was Catholic all my life. When I encounter Protestants, there was so much hate and misconception, and I don't understand why. I know history, but why? How much time you got? Why? Again, I think I said this earlier, but Catholics view Protestantism oftentimes, this isn't, I know it's a generalization, there are exceptions, blah, blah, blah. But generally, Catholics view Protestants as like Like you got some things right, obviously, because you got some things from us, but it's a little bit silly what you're doing over there with all of the smoke machines and stuff. So it's kind of viewed as like, okay, like you're being a little silly. But Protestants view Catholicism, generally speaking, as a cult, as we're worshiping Mary, we're all going to hell, we're leading people to hell, we're taking glory away from God, we're evil, whatever. There's all kinds of conspiracies with the Catholic Church. There's that difference in perspective of like, and it's actually not to bring, I guess it is not to bring politics into this, but it is actually kind of like what you often hear about how Republicans view Democrats versus how Democrats view Republicans. Republicans view Democrats as people who are, they mean well, but they're just kind of misguided on how things should be implemented to bring about the greatest good. And Democrats view Republicans as far right, extremist, evil, fascist people. And that's, I think, very similar to the Protestant and Catholic perspectives on each other. So I don't know. I mean, pastors uh, generally teach their congregations a lot of falsehoods about Catholicism. And if you want to just continue to believe what you already believe, then you're not going to look into, well, what does the other side say about this? So it's a combination of, I don't know. It's a combination of factors, it seems. What I meant was covering some of Chuck Smith's particular teachings, which to some extent have to have influenced evangelicalism as a whole and not just Calvary Chapel, and compare that to Catholicism. That is true. Chuck Smith had some very strange teachings, even as a member of Calvary Chapel when I was there. I was like, I'm pretty sure that guy was wrong about a lot of stuff. And even many of the folks who attended there, many of even the higher ups there were like, yeah, he wasn't right about everything. And he thought he knew when the world was going to end at a couple of times. So Protestant pastors and apologists fuel this, honestly, painting us as the mafia who corrupted the gospel, essentially. Yeah, true. To be frank, we believe Protestants are damned also. Well, yeah, we need to quit being softer. And that's true. That's true. But I think like we would be less, by the way, this is just my experience. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong generally. But I feel like less of an anger towards Protestantism and more of a like I just want to help you guys. you know? And maybe that's condescending or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. But I definitely don't feel this like rage towards Protestantism. I'm just like, you guys, there's so much more to this faith that you claim to hold, and you could be living such a much more beautiful and deeply spiritual life than you are now if you would just come to the Catholic Church. That's why some Protestant denominations cosplay some Judaism traditions. Yes, because we innately have a desire for a tradition. And so if evangelicals can't look to Christian history, which they can't because Christian history is Catholic, then they have to look to some other history that is somewhat related to Christianity, like Judaism. Now, modern Judaism is not related to Christianity because modern Judaism, I mean, we can get into this very deeply, but modern Judaism is not the same as ancient Judaism. Ancient Judaism actually was living under the old covenant, faithfully practicing the old covenant. But living under that covenant is impossible now because there's no temple, which means there can't be sacrifices, which were an essential part of the old covenant. So now that the temple is gone, the sacrifices are impossible, which Jesus predicted the destruction of the temple, by the way. It happened in 70 or so AD. He predicted it like 40 years before that. I think it's talked about in the Gospel of Matthew, if I'm not mistaken. But since then, all that can be left of Judaism is the rabbinic system, which involves prayer and teaching, which is essentially what we see in modern Protestant denominations as well. In evangelicalism, especially, we see songs of praise or prayer, and then we see teaching from the scriptures, which is exactly what rabbinic Judaism is today. So it makes sense that that evangelicals try to look to Judaism for a lot of traditions because they have very similar structure of church in the first place. Sorry, scrolling through your comments. A lot of you guys are just saying random stuff. Let's see. Shahana says, Protestants and Muslims alike will respect you more when you are honest and unwavering. Doesn't mean you should be rude, but be honest that these religions are false and wicked. That's true. Actually, I have a Protestant friend who was talking to me about Vatican II and some people who just outright reject Vatican II and stuff like that. And he was like, so how does the authority of the Catholic Church help if people just reject, the councils of the Catholic Church? And I responded by saying, well, Catholicism is not a democracy. If somebody rejects a council of the Catholic Church, especially an ecumenical council, then they're rejecting of the authority of the Catholic Church, which means they're rejecting the Catholic Church, which means they're rejecting Catholicism, which means they're essentially Protestants. So you can't, at the same time, respect the authority of the church while also rejecting when it exercises that authority in a way you don't like. And so I kind of use that word firmly, like, well, this person who you're talking about who is rejecting a council is actually just like you. You guys are the same because you're both rejecting the authority of the Catholic Church. And, Jesus didn't come to establish a democracy. He came to establish a monarchy. And we see that structure in the Catholic Church. And he was like, yeah, that's pretty based. Even though he's a Protestant and probably disagrees with 99% of that. Did you ever discern being a secret Jesuit? Why would I tell you if I did? Anyways. Do you like Ignatian discernment? To be honest, I don't know enough about it, but I do like the Ignatius Study Bible, which I know is not what you're asking about. Did you guys fight after you said that? No. No, he was like, based, and we moved on. All right, friends, I'm going to go. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Thank you so much. If you want to support the channel financially, you can do so over at Patreon, or we have a Buy Me a Coffee as well, which I don't know if I linked in the description, but if not, I will drop a link in the chat right now. But these are the two best ways to support the channel, is the Buy Me a Coffee and the Patreon. So if you would like to support, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/sipswithsarah. I'll drop it in the chat because I don't know if I dropped it in the description. Or you can go to patreon.com/sipswithsarah, which is linked in the description. And I greatly appreciate your support, guys. This is my full-time job. I dedicate everything I have into this effort to bring more people to the faith by explaining it and defending it against its opponents. So if you support that work, if you enjoy that, if you're glad that that is happening and you want to help that happen more, then please do consider supporting through one of these means in the description. If you like to support but you can't support financially, don't worry about it. Don't stress. Just like the stream, subscribe, and leave a comment after the stream is over. And continue to show up for the streams because it's a lot of fun. The super chats also help. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Always a good time. I will be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time, as we are every weekday. So do stay tuned, do subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you then. Until then, God bless you and cheers.